It was a Saturday in the little town of St. Petersburg, Missouri, and as Mark Twain said, all the summer world was bright and fresh and brimming with life. There was a song in every heart, and if the heart was young, it issued at the lips. There was a cheer in every face and spring in every step. Except for our boy, Tom Sawyer. Tom was being punished because, number one, he was not allowed to eat jam, so he stuffed himself inside a closet where the jam was, and he ate jam in the dark. Number two, he skipped school again to go swimming. And number three, he beat up a boy for wearing a necktie on a weekday. Like, it triggered him that some boy would be decently dressed, respectfully dressed on a weekday. So they fought, he beat him up, and now he's in trouble. So Tom's punishment was to paint the fence white. At this time period, it was about 1830s to 1840s, and Tom was 13 years old, by the way, at this time. They called it whitewashing because of the material that they were using, but anyway, it's to the effect of painting the fence white. So Tom looked at the expanse of fence and he despaired at how long it would take for him to paint all that fence. He actually wished that he had his usual chore. He didn't like chores, but he actually wished that he had his usual chore of pumping water from the town pump. At least over there would be other kids, so he has someone to talk to. Tom thought about the humiliation when kids would eventually walk past his house, and true enough, eventually, a boy named Ben Rogers did walk past. Ben Rogers was munching on an apple. He was really happy. He was off to go swimming. And Tom's mouth, when Ben passed by, was watering for that apple. But Tom didn't say anything. He didn't even look at Ben. He didn't even turn a muscle. Even when Ben Rogers started walking around Tom and gloating about how he was about to go swimming, Tom didn't move. Tom was transfixed with his work. It was like he was painting the Mona Lisa, if the Mona Lisa was just white paint. Tom would even step back for a bit, check his work, and then put delicate touches on the fence like this was the most delicate thing in the world. And finally, Tom wheeled around and said, "Oh, hey Ben, I didn't see you there." So Ben started gloating again. He was saying, "Don't you wish you could go swimming with me? Don't you wish you didn't have to do work?" But Tom was like, "Who says this is work? We don't get to paint fences every day." And Ben stopped munching that apple. He was like, "Oh, okay, then can I have a go?" And Tom almost stopped right away. He was almost like, "Okay, here's the paintbrush." But he collected himself and said, "Nah, Aunt Polly wouldn't like that. I'm the only one who can paint the fence," she says. So Ben was like, "Okay, now I gotta do this." He offered his half-eaten apple in exchange for being able to paint, which then Tom agreed to. He was like, "Okay, fine, you can paint." So Tom just sat back there munching on Ben's apple while Ben did the work. And soon, actually, there were more kids lining up to have a go at that brush. And Tom charged everyone. He got things like marbles, a kite, a dead rat on a string for some reason. He basically bankrupted the kids in town. And eventually, Tom went back to the house to tell Aunt Polly he was done. So Aunt Polly is Tom's aunt. She's his mother's sister, and Tom Sawyer lives with Aunt Polly now. His mom had already passed away, so Aunt Polly's his guardian. Anyway, so when Tom went to Aunt Polly was shocked because honestly at this point she thought that Tom had already abandoned post. So she had zero expectations from Tom at that point. But Tom was here and he's saying he's done. So she checks and true enough, not only was it done, but it had 3 coats of paint. And so Tom got another apple from Aunt Polly. Aunt Polly loves Tom, even though she had to punish him all the time and scold him all the time. Her heart actually breaks for Tom, but, she knew that she was the only one who can discipline Tom now without his mom. So Aunt Polly just gave him an apple and said, "You're such a good boy. You're free to go now and play for the rest of the day." So Tom did play for the rest of the day, and on his way back home that evening, he came across a house and there was a girl in the yard. He hasn't seen this girl before. This girl had flowing blonde curls and she was wearing a white dress. Tom thought that this was an angel that fell down from the sky. So, for context, Tom's kind of already taken. Tom had been pursuing this girl called Amy Lawrence for months. And finally, actually not 7 days ago, Amy had finally confessed back to Tom that she liked him too. And at that time, Tom felt like he was the luckiest son of a bitch alive. But now, not 7 days later, Amy Lawrence was fully out of his head, and in it was nothing but this angel right in front of him. So Tom did the only thing that he could to catch the girl's attention. Was it to come up to her and say hi? Nah. Tom started doing cartwheels right there on the road. He was doing acrobatics, he was tumbling, he was twirling, he was shouting and everything at no one. He was shouting at no one. But he was doing all of this without making eye contact with the girl. Eventually, he did dare to take a peek at her, like get a little eye contact, but she was actually already walking back to her house. So Tom started grieving at her fence. He was like, oh, don't go. And Angel Girl, we'll call her Angel Girl for now. She did go back into her house, but not before plucking a flower and throwing it over at Tom. She's a little flirt too. So Tom picked up that precious flower off the ground and put it inside his jacket pocket, right where his heart was. So Tom was over the moon. He went home for dinner and he was still super happy. He was even more happy when Sid, his half-brother, tried to steal sugar, but instead accidentally broke the sugar bowl. So Sid is the obedient kid in the house. He kept himself clean, he did all of the chores, he never gets in trouble. So by all means, he's the complete opposite of Tom. And Tom gets scolded and punished all the time. So imagine how happy Tom was when Sid was finally going to get scolded and punished. But the next thing Tom knew, he was on the floor, because Aunt Polly just smacked him across the head. She assumed that it was Tom who broke the sugar bowl because he always does these kinds of things. Tom was on the floor and he was like, but it's not me, it's Sid. But Aunt Polly wouldn't apologize. She was like, well, you probably did something today anyway that deserved it. And, to be fair to Aunt Polly, she did guess it right. And Tom could see in her eyes that she was actually sorry about smacking him and accusing him of this. But Aunt Polly didn't apologize still, and Tom's pride couldn't bear it. So Tom ran out of the house and into the night. So once Tom was outside, he started thinking about how he was wronged by Aunt Polly. He started fantasizing how it would be like if he were on his deathbed, like he would be dying, and how Aunt Polly would cry over him and ask him for forgiveness. But before his last dying breath, he would just turn away and die without forgiving her. Or what about if he just drowned instead? The townspeople would carry his body over to Aunt Polly and she would cry over him, having never requested for his forgiveness in the first place. Tom was relishing in that fantasy that he started crying for real himself. Like, did you ever do that? Like, pity yourself too much that you started crying for yourself over a fantasy? So Tom started to think about how he could arrange drowning. He was thinking of ways to drown without, the actual discomfort of dying when he remembered the flower that Angel Girl gave him. It was still inside his jacket pocket. So he plucked it out of his jacket pocket and he walked straight to her house. And at her house, he found that the second-story window had a light in it. So he just assumed that it was Angel Girl. he laid himself down on the ground under that window and held that flower to his chest. So he looked like a corpse because he was just facing the sky and he was lying down and he was holding the flower. He decided that he was just gonna die right there. And in the morning, Angel Girl would discover him and cry over his body and the future that would never be. Suddenly, the window opened. It was the maid, and she threw a bucket of water at Tom, so he had to get back up and go home. The next day was a Sunday, so that meant Sunday school. Every kid was going into the church, but Tom stayed outside before class started. So remember how Tom bankrupted every kid in town the day before? So this time, Tom is trading back all that stuff to the same kids in exchange for tickets. So tickets are these things that the superintendent at Sunday school gives out for memorizing Bible verses. 2 Bible verses equaled 1 blue ticket. 10 blue tickets could be exchanged for 1 red ticket. 10 red tickets equaled 1 yellow ticket. And 10 yellow tickets could be exchanged for the grand prize, which was a Bible. That meant that if you wanted a Bible, you had to memorize 2,000 verses for a Bible that I guess you've already memorized. So that seemed impossible, but then Mary, Tom's cousin, she already has 2 Bibles at that point, and there was a German boy in town who had 4 or 5 already. And they say that this German boy at one point recited 3,000 verses in one go, and it broke his brain, so he doesn't come to Sunday school anymore. Anyway, Sunday school is usually very boring, but that Sunday was different because they had guests. And the guests were like celebrities. It was Judge Thatcher from the city. Judge Thatcher came with his wife and their daughter, and when Tom looked, he immediately recognized that girl as none other than Angel Girl. So Tom did the only thing that was logical to him at that point, which was to create chaos. He started pulling people's hairs, making faces at kids around him, generally being rowdy, but we all know that he was just trying to catch Angel Girl's attention. And meanwhile, someone was trying to catch Tom's attention too. It was poor Amy Lawrence. She was trying to talk to Tom all morning because, they're a couple now, I guess. They liked each other. But Tom had been avoiding her all morning, so she was like, what's going on? Also, among people trying to get attention was the superintendent. His name is Mr. Walters. There was someone important here, finally, so he tried to look all impressive and eloquent and extra strict with the kids that morning. The only thing he wished that day was that some kid would have enough tickets to get a Bible. But unfortunately, he knew no one was ready. And, that German boy was also gone, so he couldn't just ask that German boy to come up and recite stuff. But then, Tom Sawyer suddenly stepped forward with 9 yellow tickets, 9 red tickets, 10 blue ones, and Tom Sawyer demanded his Bible. And this was like a freaking thunderbolt from the sky because everybody knew that Tom could not memorize anything. Sure, he can recite dialogue from the Robin Hood book word for word, but everybody knew that he couldn't memorize anything at Sunday school, so how does he have all these tickets? But the superintendent couldn't do anything about it that day because what could he do? There was someone important in church that day. He couldn't just call out Tom like that in front of the judge. It would be admitting that his own system was flawed. So Mr. Walters, the superintendent, didn't have a choice but to give Tom his Bible. And also, since this was a big event, he also had to introduce Tom to the judge, who sang praises about Tom in front of everyone. The next day was a Monday, so that's back to school. Tom willed himself to fall sick in bed, but he couldn't. So instead, he acted like he had a toothache. Because maybe then Aunt Polly would let him stay home. He was in grave pain from that toothache. But Aunt Polly just yanked that tooth off Tom's mouth and asked him to go to school. I mean, the tooth wasn't even that loose, but Aunt Polly just yanked it unceremoniously and told Tom to suck it up and go to school. So Tom had to go to school, and he was in the hallway when he spotted Huckleberry Finn. I didn't know that Huckleberry Finn was in the same universe. Did you know that? Anyway, Huckleberry Finn was a pariah in town, unfortunately. He was the son of the town drunk, who was missing all the time. Like, Mr. Finn didn't care about Huckleberry Finn at all. So Huckleberry was always on his own. He would come and go as he pleased. He would sleep on people's doorsteps, or sometimes he would sleep inside barrels that were just laying around beside the road. He was always dirty and he cursed. I mean, he's not a bully. He was just dirty and vulgar, I guess. He wasn't mean to anybody. But all the moms in town didn't like this boy. Instead of being concerned about him like they should because he's a kid, they asked their kids to not ever play or talk to Huckleberry Finn. And also, that is why all kids wanted to talk to Huckleberry Finn. And that includes Tom Sawyer. Tom approached Huckleberry, and Huckleberry was carrying something, so Tom asked him what it was. It was a dead cat, so Huckleberry Finn was carrying a dead cat to school. Tom asked what it was for, like, why do you have a corpse of a cat with you? And Huckleberry said it was to get rid of warts. How you do it is at midnight, you go to the grave of someone who was just recently buried. This person's soul would then be picked up by the devils at midnight. So when the devils come, you have to throw the cat at them, and then you do a little chant. You say, devil follow corpse, cat follow devil, warts follow cat. And that's how you get rid of a wart, apparently. So Tom was like, I feel like there are better ways to get rid of a wart, but actually all of Tom's ideas were all as unhinged as Huckleberry's. But in the end, Tom asked Huckleberry when he would do it. Huckleberry said he would do it that very night because someone called Horace Williams was just buried on Saturday, and everybody know that nobody works on a Sunday, so that means today would be the prime time to do the wart removal thing. So Tom was like, great, can I come with? Before you go to the grave, can you drop by my house and you can just meow outside of my window so I know you're there? And Huckleberry was like, yeah, sure, but this time you have to wake up because last time I kept meowing at your window and you didn't wake up, and your neighbors thought I was an actual cat, so they threw rocks at me. So Tom promised, okay, yeah, sure, and they made a deal to go that night. So when Tom finally reached the classroom, he was very late because he was just talking to Huckleberry Finn, and being late means punishment. So Tom already had a good excuse in mind. It was a noble excuse, so it had the best possibility of getting out of trouble. But as soon as he entered the classroom, all he saw was flowy blonde curls in a seat. And beside those long curls, an empty seat. So when the teacher asked him why he was late, Tom was like, I was chatting with Huckleberry Finn, the juvenile pariah. So the class was like, has this boy gone mad? Tom is always in trouble, but he at least always denies it first. So anyway, the teacher punished Tom, and the way that the classroom was set up is one side of the classroom was all girls and then the other side was all boys. So the punishment this time was for Tom to sit on the girl side of the classroom, and the only empty seat in that side of the classroom is right beside Angel Girl. Tom sat down next to her, trying not to make eye contact again, because, class has started. He's supposed to be a good boy. He's focused in class. Then, when the coast was clear, Tom started drawing on his pad, but he kept his hand covered so Angel Girl couldn't see. Angel Girl tried not to look, but in the end, she got so curious that she asked what it was, and Tom showed her. It was just a basic ass drawing of a house. But then Angel Girl was like, wow, I wish I could draw. You know, Angel Girl's a little flirt too, and we like that. So Angel Girl asked Tom what his name was. The ice was broken. She was like, isn't it Thomas Sawyer? You got that Bible at Sunday school. And Tom said, oh no, that's just the name they used to hit me with. You can call me Tom. What's your name? Becky Thatcher. And with that, Tom started scribbling in his pad again. And he covered it with his hand again. So Angel Girl, oh, Becky Thatcher. So Becky Thatcher couldn't see it. But Becky was less shy now. It was the same level of flirt, but way less shyness. Becky begged Tom to let her see what it was. And Tom at first was like, no, I don't want to show you. And Becky was like, please show me. It was this flirty back and forth. And finally, Tom showed her what it was. It was 3 words, and it said, I love you. And with that, Becky shrieked because she was jump scared with this, you know? And the next thing Tom knew was he felt a hand close in on his ear. It was the teacher, and he dragged Tom all the way back to the boys' side of the classroom. A few hours later, at lunchtime, Tom and Becky were alone in school. All the kids had gone home for lunch before afternoon classes, but both these kids stayed back because Becky wanted to learn how to draw that basic-ass house, remember? And Tom offered to teach her. He took her hand and guided her to drawing, a square and a rectangle on top, basically. And after that, they started chatting. They talked about the circus, their favorite toys, which, by the way, for Tom was a rat on a string, like a dead rat on a string. Eventually, Tom asked Becky, have you ever been engaged, like to be married? These kids are 13, by the way. And Becky said, no, what does that mean? Tom explained that it was basically a promise to not love or marry anyone else than the person you're engaged with. Anybody can do it, or at least anybody in love. And then Tom asked Becky if she remembered what he wrote on that piece of paper. And Becky was like, yeah. And Tom was like, can I say it to you in person this time? And Becky said no, maybe next time. But Tom begged Becky. It was so uncomfortable for me as a reader because it was obviously a no, okay? But Tom kept pushing. And at one point, Becky hesitated, and Tom took that as consent, and he went ahead and said it to her. He then pressured Becky to say it back, and it was a whole back and forth again of Becky not wanting to do it, but Becky finally said it back. But as soon as Becky said it, she was so giddy that she started running around the room like a dog with zoomies, and Tom had to chase her. They eventually found themselves in the corner of the classroom, and Tom, in my opinion, pressured Becky to kiss him, and they did kiss. So after that, Tom was like, okay, now we're engaged. You can never love or marry anybody, and we will always choose each other at parties because we're engaged now. And Becky was liking it. She was like, okay, then you, Tom, you can never love anybody else either. And then she said, wow, being engaged is actually kind of nice. And then Tom said, yeah, it's great, isn't it? Me and Amy Lawrence. Tom stopped himself. The guilt on his face told Becky everything. She was like, wait, you were engaged to someone else? And then she started crying, like she was inconsolable. Tom tried to comfort Becky by saying that he didn't care about Amy at all anymore, but Becky would just push him away. She wouldn't talk to him. Tom tried a few more times, but Becky wouldn't budge. And finally, Tom's pride again couldn't take it anymore, so he ran away from school and he didn't come back for the rest of the day. Meanwhile, Becky was still there in the classroom sobbing. She expected more groveling, so she was just in the corner sobbing into a corner of the classroom. And when she noticed that Tom was actually really gone, he was not in the school anymore even, she cried even harder alone. So Tom went off into the woods the rest of the day and he fantasized about being dead again, but now it's Becky crying over his body. Then he decided that if he ever did run away, he would be a pirate instead, so he could come back all muscly and tan and people would want to be with him or people would want to be him. But eventually he went home without going back to school. And that night, at midnight, Tom was in bed when he heard a meow. He was ready for it this time, so he snuck out of the house as quietly and quickly as he could, and he and Huckleberry Finn went off into the night to the graveyard. Once they reached Mr. Williams's grave, they hid themselves behind an elm tree that was right beside the grave. It was dark, cold, and creepy. The wind sounded like it was moaning or someone was moaning, and every second of the quiet just sounded like the very moment before a jump scare. And then the boys heard voices from the far end of the graveyard. Huckleberry Finn started freaking out. He said he wished they didn't come. But Tom tried to comfort Huckleberry. He was like, "This was your idea?" And also he said, "I don't think they're gonna do anything to us. We're not doing anything. We're just sitting here. And besides, they probably wouldn't even notice us were hiding." The boys looked on towards where the sounds came from, and 3 figures emerged from the darkness. Huckleberry Finn was like, "This is it. Those are the devils. Tom, please start praying for the both of us." Tom tried, but we all know that he couldn't memorize anything, let alone prayer. So he tried, but he wasn't able to do it properly. But as the figures came closer, Huckleberry Finn actually recognized one of the voices. He was like, "Hey, I know that voice. It's Muff Putter's voice." Huckleberry Finn was a lot less afraid now. He's like, "Yeah, he can't do anything to us. He's always drunk." And then Tom recognized the second voice. It was Joe. So let's pause for context. There are actually 2 Joes in this story. The first Joe is Tom Sawyer's best friend. His name is Joe Harper. We will meet him later, but Joe Harper's a kid and he's Tom's best friend. This Joe is Joe number 2. He's an adult for one, so we'll call him Adult Joe for now. In the book, Joe is also called something else, but it contains a slur for Native Americans, so we're not gonna do that. So anyway, Tom recognized the second voice to be Adult Joe. And the third person in the group, the boys didn't recognize the voice of that person, but as the group got closer, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn did recognize the man by light to be Dr. Robinson. The 3 men stopped right at Mr. Williams's grave too, same as Tom and Huckleberry, but they were hidden. And Dr. Robinson went to sit down by the same elm tree where the boys were. Like they were just sitting on different sides of the elm tree, and the boys could literally reach out and tap Dr. Robinson if they wanted to. But the boys stayed quiet and hidden, and the 3 men didn't notice the boys. Muff Putter and Adult Joe were carrying a hand barrow. So a hand barrow is like a wheelbarrow without wheels. So it's just a stretcher with 2 handles on each side. Muff Putter and Adult Joe put down the hand barrow and grabbed some shovels, and they started digging the grave. It was a grave robbery, basically. Dr. Robinson just sat there, commanding the 2 men to go faster. It looked like Dr. Robinson hired the 2 men to do the work for him. Eventually, the body was dug up. It was covered with a blanket and tied to the hand barrow. So at this point, Muff Putter turned to Dr. Robinson and said, "Okay, it's going to be $5 more or else the body stays here." Dr. Robinson complained. He was like, "But I already paid you guys in full." And then that's when Adult Joe came in. He told Dr. Robinson how many years ago Dr. Robinson chased him away from their kitchen when adult Joe came to beg for food. And Dr. Robinson's father even had him jailed for being a beggar. So around this point, adult Joe, while he was talking to Dr. Robinson, he had his fist near Dr. Robinson's face. But it was Dr. Robinson who struck first. Dr. Robinson punched adult Joe, and adult Joe went sprawling on the ground. And this was when Muff Potter came in to defend adult Joe. He and Dr. Robinson started fighting too, but then Dr. Robinson picked up the headboard from the ground. It was from the grave. Dr. Robinson hit Muff Potter with it, and Muff Potter crumpled to the ground and was unconscious. But what Dr. Robinson didn't notice was that adult Joe was actually already up, and he had picked up Muff Potter's knife. And just as Dr. Robinson hit Muff Potter with that headboard, adult Joe plunged the knife into Dr. Robinson's chest. Dr. Robinson staggered around for a bit before finally collapsing on top of Muff Potter, so he was spewing blood all over Muff Potter too. And the two boys, Tom and Huckleberry, they quietly fled into the darkness. So that was part 1 of the adventures of Tom Sawyer. See you in part 2.